I first noticed Ruby Roberts on the first day of my junior year. I quietly observed her whenever the opportunity arose. I never voiced it to anyone, but I believe some of my classmates caught up on my curiosity before Halloween. Ruby approached me directly about it. "You have been looking at me since school started. Why?" Surprised, I mumbled that she was the most gorgeous girl I had ever seen. "So stop it." "I don't like it," she replied. But stopping wasn't so simple. She was just a few inches shorter than me, but she exuded confidence and had stunning blue eyes that contrasted with her golden hair. Following that chat, I made an attempt to be more discreet. We shared one class and had another in which our classrooms were adjacent to each other, so bumping into her was unavoidable. When I glanced her way, I noticed she was constantly checking to see if I was observing, even in class where she sat in front of me. She turned around occasionally. One day in the corridor, she accosted me again. "You may as well ask me out. This little game is becoming ludicrous. It might have seemed stupid to her, but not to me." Nonetheless, I mustered the nerve to invite her out for a drink at the Retro, a traditional soda fountain patterned after the ones from the 1940s and 1950s, albeit they were somewhat antiquated by then. That initial talk showed more about me than about her. I told her I was an orphan, living with my great-aunt after my parents perished in an accident. I adored my aunt, but the age difference made it difficult to connect emotionally, and she was becoming forgetful. I assisted around the house with duties in exchange for her school care. I maintained an A- average. Ruby struggled to maintain B- grades, owing to her popularity and lack of focus on her studies. She was athletic, playing hockey and basketball, whereas I worked part-time after school and couldn't participate in any extracurricular activities. I despised when work interfered with her games. I wanted to be there and watch. I had my own social group, and Lola Monroe was one of the closest. We grew up on the same block, started kindergarten together, and shared classmates throughout elementary school. High school separated us a little, but we always made time to catch up. Lola experienced some criticism at school for her decisions, but it never harmed our friendship. We were close, but it was strictly platonic, and this never altered. When I first developed feelings for Ruby, jealousy set in. Other males noted her beauty, and she treated us all fairly similarly. But after a while, I noticed something. She dates someone else, and then it will be my turn again. I took solace in knowing that I had the same number of opportunities with her as everyone else. I eventually got over my envy, since I knew she would always come back to me. By senior year, I knew I had her heart. We were both inexperienced in relationships, and I was not in a rush to change that. But on the night of the senior prom, everything changed. We snuck back to my aunt's house, and by morning, we both felt like different people. She was wearing the smallest engagement ring I could get, and we were man and woman rather than boy and girl. Ruby went to work in Barry's sub shop, while I worked in a local manufacturer as an inventory clerk in the stockroom. The sub-store was owned by a bachelor who planned to stay that way. Barry looked really well for a 35-year-old man. He was very friendly and outgoing with the women who worked for him as food preparers. My job didn't sound like much, and it didn't pay particularly well at the starting level. However, I was promised that if I performed well in this role, I would be given Mr. Dobbs's job as senior stockroom manager. Mr. Dobbs would retire in 2 years. Some of it was rather complicated, and one had to pay close attention to detail. There were a million things to learn. For example, we employed gold leaf in several of the factory's applications, which had to be handled with extreme caution due to its high cost. There were also rigorous inventory levels to monitor. I believe I was one of the more diligent employees or attempted to get employment as soon as I was employed, and the factory authorities assigned me to another shift. They assigned me to handle the stockroom from 3 in the afternoon to 11 in the evening. I accepted it when I discovered it offered a 10% premium. Ruby was working at 9:30 a.m. until 3 in the afternoon. There was a second shift at the sub shop, with hours ranging from 3 in the afternoon to 9. I could understand her loneliness in the evenings, especially when she came home one day and announced she was taking the nighttime shift as well. We both thought this was a wise decision. 3 weeks later, we were married, and her boss provided a tiny cottage for rent. That is where we have made our home. Ruby was joined by an aunt from upstate, and each of us brought a few of acquaintances to City Hall to see the ceremony. We were almost 19, on our way to a happy life together. The rent on the house was within our budget, and we had enough money to enjoy some of life's comforts. First, there was a vehicle. Ruby insisted on a Ford Mustang, despite my belief that a sedan would suffice. The payments were $75 per month higher than we had budgeted. When asked to compensate, Ruby stated that she would work overtime. And sometimes I took her to work for the lunchtime crowd. We eventually hoped to acquire our own home, so we opened a savings account for that purpose. We were in terrific shape when Ruby announced her transition from food preparation to cashier, which included a wage raise. My raises arrived as promised, and we were doing well. We owned an automobile. We had created a home savings fund and were paying all of our expenses on time. We had never discussed having children, and because we were still in our teens, we had plenty of time to make a decision. Ruby was very diligent with her birth control regimen, and sex improved as we gained more experience. Ruby was often the first to advise trying something new she'd heard about at work. I was getting the rewards and welcomed them all. I felt like I was living life by the boss's standards. If I wanted something, I could press life a bit tighter and have it everything. It had worked thus far, hadn't it? I said that we had one car. I used it to get to work, which was on the outskirts of the city. I'd drop Ruby off along the way. She rode home with her employer after the sub shop had closed for the evening. I believed Barry because he was 35 and much older than us. The transportation, the job hours, and the salary were all ideal for living the high life. I was 3 months away from Mr. Dodd's retirement and anticipating a significant boost in my salary. Then a transformer blew, delivering electricity to the factory. Everything was turned off save for the battery-powered security lights. I stayed until just before Ruby left, hoping to pick her up and maybe go for a beer together at a bar. I had to park down the street from the sub shop. As I was walking toward the building, I noticed Ruby and Barry pause and kiss on their way out of the shop. They reached his car and sat in it for about 3 or 4 minutes before he started it. I could see their heads, and they hadn't kissed since, but they were very near. Was he fondling her? It surely appeared that he was. I returned to my parked car and followed them home from a distance. Ruby got out and waited for Barry to come around the car. They entered the home jointly. When she was unlocking the door, I could see his hand caressing her, but the hall light turned on, revealing the silhouette of them kissing. There were no lights for a few minutes before the dull bedroom light came on. Kim turned on 45 minutes later, and the bathroom light came on. Barry emerged 20 minutes later, having kissed Ruby again in the corridor. He was still brushing his damp hair as he got in his car and drove away. My typical time of arrival home was 11:35. I entered the house on time. Ruby had laid up my supper on the table and we sat down for dinner. It was food from a sub shop. I always had to choose between a meatball grinder and cold meats. As I walked in, there was normally a salad on the table and coffee being served. We usually shared a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream for dessert. Tonight, instead of using the grinder, I ate as much salad as possible. The ice cream did not set very well either. Ruby was quite concerned. Fortunately for you, tonight is my shower night, so you don't have to make love to me. It occurred to me then that Ruby had taken her shower the nights before I arrived home. I didn't receive any affection if we took a shower together. I was always shown some love. I tried to remember how frequently this occurred. She was showered 2 or 3 evenings per week before I came. I was restless that evening and went to bed earlier than usual after watching late-night television shows. The next day, I dropped Ruby off at her normal hour. I called work and said I was sick. I called Lola, the girl I'd gone to school with. I explained the problem and stated that I would pay whatever it necessary for her to carry out my proposal. It was going to cost me a great meal out, but the rest would be free. You can't beat that. We had grown apart since Ruby and I became a relationship, but we remained the greatest of friends. I picked up Lola around 6 p.m., and we had a great supper at the best restaurant in town. Derek, this is going to crush your wife, you know. Do you really want to do that to her? I've been thinking about that all day. I want her to understand a little of my pain. I am leaving her tonight. I've withdrawn funds from all of our accounts, but I'm leaving her the automobile. She has Barry, so she will not be impoverished. He owns the house we live in. I'm getting out. I am more concerned about you. This will severely damage your reputation. You will develop a reputation from which you will never recover. Does not matter. I am who I am. My reputation plummeted in high school. You knew who to call if you needed something like this, right? I will acknowledge that I am using you. You do not have to go through with it. No, I'll do it. At the very least, I had a date with a wonderful guy I care about once. You've always been a good man, and that is why I am here. I've never married, and I never intend to. I have a lot of sex and sometimes like it. Just once, I'd like to hear someone say, Lola, I love you, but I don't expect them to mean it. Lola, don't lose hope. My life has just been completely shattered. But I hope to feel happy again eventually. The scene was prepared for Ruby's arrival home. The only issue was if Barry entered the house, as he had the night before. If my assumption was true, I couldn't recall Ruby having a shower before I arrived home 2 nights in a row. At 8:30 p.m., Lola and I had a shower. Yes, we took it jointly. This was the first time I had ever seen or been with someone other than Ruby in my life. Would I behave like a teen? Lola was indifferent about me seeing her and chuckled when she saw I was aroused. Derek, I've known you all my life. Relax and believe we do this every day. It's easy for me, but I can see it's difficult for you. We heard Barry's car come to a stop out front and then drive away a few minutes later. The front door opened, and we heard Ruby walk past. The bedroom door was half open, allowing her to see that the light was on as she entered the living room. Derek? Is that you in the bed? Have you been sick? No, sweetheart, I am not unwell. Come inside. We have company. Ruby approached the door and pushed it fully open. Lola and I were lying close together, leaving little to the imagination. I had one arm around her neck and over her shoulder, and Lola was holding my other hand. Ruby was dumbfounded at first, but not for long. She began shouting angrily. I snapped, "Quiet!" Ruby paused just long enough to hear Lola's calm words. Derek thought one was insufficient, so he wanted to explore how two might function. Do you want to join us? Ruby burst into tears and walked out of the room, slamming the door shut. I grinned as I turned to Lola. I suppose we have around 15 minutes until she either makes an excuse or loses it totally. Lola, you truly are something special. I would love to have another chance like this. I rarely say it. Derek, you're a fantastic person. Hurry. 15 minutes might not be enough. Yes, it was. Lola brought me to a climax. It's too soon for me to relish her. Perhaps someday. While Lola was taking her second shower of the evening, I went outside to face my wife. Ruby made no justifications and nothing was mentioned regarding Barry. There was that look that screamed she was guilty and attacking was the only option. Derek, I need you out of the house in 1 hour. Just pack your belongings. How could you do this to me? We've been together for 4 years. I thought you loved me. And then you bring garbage like Lola into our house and have sex with her right in front of me, in our marriage bed. Get the hell out. I don't think I'll ever speak with you again. Okay. That's about what I expected you to say. I'm going to leave you the Mustang. I took all of the money that we had saved. That brings us about even. I'm confident Barry will offer you a raise once he finds out. He will not have to share you with your spouse. I picked up the suitcases I had packed earlier and placed them in the nook behind the front entrance. I went out and put them in Lola's car on the street, one space down from our driveway. I returned and waited for Lola to emerge from the bedroom where she was getting dressed. Ruby wanted to say something. I didn't know what. Perhaps an explanation for her adultery. Perhaps she wanted to recant her request that I depart. I didn't ask. Lola emerged finally. She had taken the effort to reapply her makeup and had clearly used Ruby's shower cap because her hair was combed and thoroughly dry. She was equally lovely as Ruby, but in a different manner. Ruby had one final shot at her. 304. Lola had one too. No, Ruby, I am a hooker. I'll be honest about that. You, however, are a cheating wife. I would give my right arm to be the wife of a man who loved me as much as he loved you. I'm truly sad for you. I pray we never meet again, because I cannot bear the sight of you. Come, Derek. I believe we are finished here. We drove away from my former house. Where did Derek go? I suppose this is the bus station. My aunt is senile and lives in a nursing facility. The state is taking care of her. She has an administrator. For whatever estate she possesses, I'll just purchase myself a ticket to who knows where. I'll see if I like it and where it takes me. If I don't, I'll buy a ticket to another location. You mean you've got no plans? I have not had time to make any. Any suggestions? No, nothing comes to mind right now. However, you should avoid rushing into anything. Why don't you spend tonight with me and establish a plan? A good night's sleep will make things better tomorrow. I did not leave town for a week. I was going to leave my work without alerting them. I couldn't do it, for they had been quite kind to me. Mr. Dobbs promised to give me a solid recommendation no matter where I ended up. He stated he would miss me a lot. I assume you were wondering if I was sleeping with Lola. Yes, I was. But if you'd asked if I was having sex with her, I'd have to admit it. No, not yet anyhow. Lola owned a one-bedroom apartment and did not entertain her clients there. She would return from a date and crawl into the bed where I was sleeping. Derek, kiss me, and then let me sleep. That is the only way I can forget about my current lifestyle. I was preparing her breakfast in the morning, and then we would converse. Ruby was the sole taboo subject. 3 days after being asked to leave Ruby, I made a suggestion. Lola, we get along well together. You have a reputation as a hooker in the city. I'm surely leaving. Why don't both of us leave? Leave together? I mean, we could be Lola and Derek Lawson? Are you married? I cannot be Mrs. Lawson. I was thinking more about being sister and brother. That's overly complicated. That would imply you have A304 for a sister here. Perhaps, but someplace else you wouldn't have to be. I have a wife that could qualify as one. I stopped as if I expected her to change. I'd take her back. You still adore her, right? I was wondering how you felt about her after all of this. Derek, do you think I could modify my lifestyle by living somewhere else? Does sex mean that much to you? Could you do without it? If only I could pay my expenses. I'm on a savings plan and didn't expect to do this for long, so I live as cheaply as possible. Would you like to test it? The brother-sister thing. We couldn't make love if we chose that option. We haven't decided yet. Then we should make love before we decide, in case that's the decision we make. We made love during the day and later at night. I said the words Lola wanted to hear. I genuinely believe I expressed things in a way that made her trust me. I guess I was half in love with her. At the time, I definitely loved her more than my cheating wife. We stayed huddled together all night. We made our selection at 6 in the morning. Lola started about paying her debts and organizing her affairs. It took another day. I drove Lola's automobile by my former home late Tuesday evening. Barry's car was parked on the street, while the one I had left for Ruby was in the driveway. I couldn't tell if he was going home or staying. I would wait a short while, only to discover that I was holding a couple of items that Lola used for protection when she went out on an iffy date. The home was dark, and I waited in the shadows for more than an hour. Finally, the entire light turned on, and I could see Barry and Ruby kiss. He downed the stairs as Ruby closed the door. Do I care if she sees me? Not really. I approached him from behind, armed with a little stun gun that was just powerful enough to knock him down. He received a decent dose of pepper spray in the face as well as a couple of solid kicks to the ribs. I just wanted him to feel some pain. I was confident that this would work. This was so out of character for me that if anyone saw me fleeing, they would not identify me. 2 hours later, we had packed and loaded the car and proceeded west out of town. We left Lola's reputation and my cheating wife behind. Now we were just a brother and sister yearning for a new start. We hoped it would be superior to what had come before. According to the town monument, the population was 11,562. It is large enough to support some business, but because of the small town atmosphere, it is primarily agriculturally connected. Although we passed by an industrial zone on the outside, I stopped at Whitaker's Diner for lunch. When we arrived inside, we noticed everything was clean and had a menu presented. We'd been on the road for 2 days. We could have traveled this far in 1 day, but we chose to take our time. We'd slept 1 night in the same bed and 1 night in twins. We didn't since a sister and brother said we shouldn't. Okay, this was going to work. We ordered soup, a 7-ounce steak with fries, apple pie, and coffee. We finished our dinner at the conclusion of the lunch hour. We soon became the sole clients. Agnes, the lone waitress, pulled a chair from a table and took a seat at the end of our booth. Your automobile plates indicate that you were on vacation in New York. Is it nice for a husband and wife to go on vacation so early in the summer? Nope. We are not married. We may be brother and sister looking to relocate. If I could find a decent job, I'd consider taking it. We'd have to find somewhere to live, though. That's not too pricey. Now, half of the businesses in town are appealing for assistance. But you'll probably want to see one of the new factories. They pay more. We can't even get somebody to wash the dishes here at the diner. Too bad you two aren't married. This diner is currently for sale. It would be an excellent business to possess. It will improve once all of the factories start functioning. How much would it cost to acquire, say, on a lease purchase agreement? You can do better than that. If you want an investor to partner with you, I would put up half, and you could sign for the rest. I've saved a few pennies and have been waiting tables here for 7 years. Of course, you would have to work almost every day. If you've never ran a diner before, I can train you. There is a 2-bedroom house in the backyard that might be converted into a home. If you're not too finicky, you sound desperate. I am. I adore this site. I would buy it all myself. However, as previously said, there is the issue of receiving assistance, and I'm not sure how to manage 2 fresh young folks who are willing to work. This place has the potential to be really lively. It's a thought. We're heading into town for the night. If you see us for breakfast, perhaps you will have time to speak with us again. I will make time. I still have dishes to do, so I better get going. What did you say your names were? I smiled to myself. This woman was an expert at pulling information out of people. We're Lola Monroe and Derek Lawson. We located a modest motel on the other side of town. There was only 1 open room, which had 2 single beds. When we checked in, the girl at the counter saw that Lola signed her name incorrectly, and we explained that we were sister and brother, but we would be fine sharing a room close enough. Let her work things out. We walked around the established area of town, and nearly every establishment had a sign in their window advertising that they were hiring or simply needed help. We talked in the afternoon while lying in our different beds. What are your thoughts? Is this the town where we wish to start our new lives? Looks promising. I'm not trying to pry, but how much money do you have with you? I only have approximately $2,500. Some of that, I believe, belongs to Ruby. However, she most certainly received that amount from Barry for exposing her legs. Lola began laughing. I got my money by spreading my legs in the same way. If we purchased the diner, we could claim, "This is the business that Twat built." That struck me as incredibly humorous, and it was infectious, keeping us laughing for several minutes. Seriously, I have nearly $17,000 put together. It's unlikely that it'll be enough to pay for the dinner, but we won't know until we ask. Let's go back for dinner today and see how it goes with more people in attendance. The diner was almost too busy. The owners were the ones who prepared the cuisine. They were excellent at it with no missing moves. Many of the clients were well known, and their dinners began as soon as they walked through the door. Agnes had a young girl helping her with the tables, and they were both swamped. Customers never complained about their meals being delayed. As we finished our dessert, there was a pleasant family feeling in the diner. Lola spoke. The restaurant requires one extra experienced waitress, as well as additional kitchen staff. If the owners cook all 3 meals, they must be fatigued. You and I could work here, but there wouldn't be enough help. Wouldn't it be fun if we know all of the clients' first names as Agnes does? I was becoming increasingly fascinated as Lola spoke. She was far more comfortable among people than I was with males in particular. I'd worked in a stockroom with no interaction with others. I may learn to be friendly by observing how Agnes treated the customers. When Agnes came by with our check, I asked if the customers were all gone. How long before you can clean up and go home? There are the pots and pans that I agreed to do. I am paid a bit extra for doing those simply so they can be completed an hour or more later. That still does not cover everything. I'll have to come in early to accomplish the prep work and setups that should be completed tonight. I am very exhausted. I'm googly-eyed. Do you want to help with the dishes tonight? We're interested in what you said this afternoon. I will show you what has to be done. There is a guard up there, and he is beaming down at me as we chat. Wow. I haven't woken up this early in years. The diner opens at 6:30 in the coffee shop. Must be ready by the time the door opens. It's not like going to work at 3 in the afternoon, that is for certain. I never woke up before noon. Several days. A fact I had never gone to bed many nights prior. 3 either. Are you sure you'll sleep anyway? My bed served as my workspace, just like your stockroom was for you. Those days are over, and I'm glad, even if I have to wake up so early. We parked behind the diner and entered through the back door to the kitchen. We became acquainted with the interior last night while preparing the pots and pans. This morning, the elderly owners, Bert and Betty Whitaker, were already there starting breakfast, and Agnes was in the dining room making sure the sugar bowls were filled, etc. It seemed like Lola and I were in the way half of the time, but Lola was taking care of the dishes as they were used, and when the plates and silverware came out, she kept up with those herself. I tried to help with the cooking, but it was more about having supplies on available for Bert as the orders were produced. I delivered them to Agnes, who seized them and carried them to the correct table. That marked the start of the first day. A month later, Bert cornered us as we were cleaning up after breakfast one morning. Lola, Agnes, and I had handled the entire meal flawlessly. I looked around and discovered some part-time employment opportunities. Sometimes the aide was just scheduled for 1 meal each day. I had called the Parent-Teacher Association, and the president had referred me to some women who could use some more money. When school started, I knew there would be many fighting for this job and the little dollars it offered. Anyway, as I mentioned, Lola and I were cornered. Will you two purchase the diner from Betty and me? Agnes wants to buy half, but she is apprehensive about her ability to manage it and handle all of the other aspects of running it. I can see where the 3 of you can succeed, better than what Mrs. and I have. In fact, you've done things I'd never thought about. That night, we ran out of rolls to set on the table. You used small fake pizzas to keep the table engaged while they waited for their supper. That was a brilliant idea. Where did you receive the idea? My parents were poor growing up. We always had a garden, and Mom would can salsa to preserve the produce. When I got hungry, I'd spread a little salsa on a slice of toast and top it with a slice of American cheese. Heat it up. And there was my snack. It takes roughly 5 minutes. Now that we have microwaves, the total cost to purchase the item is approximately $0.35. It is well worth the cost to have a satisfied customer. You'll notice that a customer normally orders a little extra from the menu, so that small item is roughly equivalent to a single roll. So, what type of agreement are we discussing here? On September 1st, one waitress, a retired hooker, and a cheated-on husband co-owned a popular diner. Bert was 70 years old and had spent his entire life at the diner. We didn't see Betty much after we bought it, except when she came in for a meal. Bert, on the other hand, showed up virtually daily to help. He refused to accept payment for what he'd done, claiming he wanted to keep his hand in. When I asked about the building out back, Dad decided to fix it up so Lola and I could live there. All we needed to do was purchase the materials. It wasn't defined, but he claimed it came with the property. Lola rapidly learned how to serve tables and enjoyed being in front of the guests. She was a wonderful waitress, and when someone flirted with her, she reciprocated. If things got too hot, she threatened to phone her brother. Usually it was all for fun, so no difficulties arose. I spent my first Thanksgiving away from Ruby feeling very melancholy. She had always made the most of the holiday. I considered calling her, but I knew Barry would answer the phone and make me feel worse than before. I was quite blue, and it wouldn't leave me. Her 21st birthday was in 10 days. Derek flew home to visit her. You have to either forget her or get divorced. If you speak to her, you should be able to choose what to do. The diner will be okay without me for a few days. Go. I am giving you 5 days. The Whitakers will step in to cover for you. I purchased an airline ticket and was shortly in the air. When I got to the airport, I rented a car and traveled for half an hour to my hometown. The Mustang was in the driveway, and I saw lights on inside the house. I walked up to the door. It was locked, but my key worked, so I opened it and entered my former house. Ruby was sitting on the couch in the living room, munching a snack off the TV tray in front of her. She averted her gaze from the television screen and grudgingly turned to face me. This informed me that she was expecting someone else. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she began weeping. I wanted to approach her, but stayed back, waiting to hear what she would say. Derek, I worried if I'd ever see you again. Did you come to gloat about your unfaithful wife? I don't understand what you mean. Why should I gloat? Ruby pushed the plate and table away from her and stood up. Because I am pregnant. That was why she started to show signs of pregnancy. It's Barry's baby, but he won't have anything to do with me or the new child. I have been such an idiot. Derek, I apologize for what I did to you. This angered me. I assume if Barry was still in love with you and wanted the baby, you wouldn't feel the need to apologize to me. Am I correct? Ruby sank back on the couch, crying even more. I do not mean to cry. I will quit if you give me a minute. I went out to the kitchen and set the coffee on the cupboards, which had some food in them but were not as well stocked as when I lived here. The coffee was almost perfect when the back door opened and a woman walked in. She was older than us and looked quite plain. Who are you? I knew her as Ruby's aunt from some hamlet upstate. I couldn't remember her name, however, Ruby's former husband. Her expression changed to one of recognition. Ruby murmured from behind me, focusing on the words, ex-spouse. Did you divorce me, Derek? No. Didn't you divorce me? That was the plan, right? I got a subdued. No. The woman spoke. Good. That resolves all of Ruby's issues. You and your partner can reconcile and resume your lives. Ruby was staring at me. What she read there informed her it was not going to happen. Aunt Mabel, I can't expect him to after how I've treated him. Aunt Mabel shook her head but said nothing. I took down the glasses and poured the coffee. Soon the questioning began. Derek, were you the one who beat up Barry? No. I promise I haven't seen him since the night before my departure. Why? What happened? I was not going to admit anything. He got hurt about a day after you and Lola arrived. I assumed it must be you. It was not. How did you get pregnant? Derek, I was so angry off with you and Lola that I decided to show you. I was planning to get knocked up and claim the baby as yours. It did not function since it took too long before it occurred. Even Barry admitted that it belonged to him. I made him pay for it, however. What about Lola? Did you see her again after that night? I live with her. We're in business together. I instantly remembered what Lola had said about how the firm was funded. What about the business? That's what they built. I attempted to hide my smile, but couldn't. Ruby assumed I was thinking lovely things about the woman she had to believe was a hooker. Oh, Derek, does that imply you were her pimp? No. And for your information, she has not had a John, and I have not had intercourse with her. We are part owners of a diner and reside in the same home. So, how do you feel about Barry? Is he still coming over? God, no. When he discovered I was pregnant, he dismissed me. I'd saved a little money after you took everything I had, and I got a lawyer to file a harassment complaint against him. So, rather than going to court and maybe losing his sub-store, he is paying what I requested. I receive a monthly paycheck, and when the kid arrives, he will pay all of the costs and maintenance until the infant is 18. Barry must maintain a paid-up life insurance policy to cover me and the kid until he is 18 in case something happens to him. What will happen to the baby if something happens to you? It is given to the court-appointed caregiver. What Barry pays goes with the child unless he is the caregiver, in which case the administrator will battle against his obtaining the baby. I've chosen the individual who would be my first choice, and my lawyer believes the court would honor my desires. Ruby was quietly reflecting on what we had both learned. I know you lived with Lola, but you said you didn't sleep with her. I do not believe you. Believe in everything you want. You drove me to her. We decided not to continue having sex. Want to know why? This has nothing to do with you. She's waiting for someone to come along and tell her that he loves her. I used her to get back at you without considering her feelings, and there is no getting around that. But we remain the best of friends, and I respect her, and I love her, just not in that way. I had previously disregarded the aunt, but I now addressed her as Aunt Mabel. It was a pleasure to meet you again. I should get along. Will you take care of Ruby, Ruby? I don't know what to tell you about the baby. I think I wished our marriage had worked out. We were having a baby. Ruby walked into the living room, tears in her eyes. Mabel put on her coat and stepped out with me. It was freezing, and when I unlocked the door, she slid into the passenger seat. I'd want to obtain your address and telephone number. I also wanted to know if you plan to divorce my niece. No, not just now. I don't have the money because everything is tied up at the diner. If she wants one, she'll have to pay for it herself. When I said, perhaps Barry will pay for it, it was a rude statement. I mentioned this while I was jotting down what Mabel wanted. Stop it. Ruby brought it on herself, yet she expects nothing from you. She will soon be a single mother with no one but me to love her. She is paying a heavy price for what she done, but she is making the best of a difficult position. Give her that, at least. You don't realize how much she hurt me, do you? For 4 years, I lived each minute for her. I had to pause for a minute before continuing. But that is now behind us. I reached over the front seat to grab a parcel from behind me. Tomorrow is her birthday. I know how excited she used to be on her birthday. I had a friend buy this for me and give it to her. She'll suspect I bought it for my friend Lola, but it wasn't. It was a woman named Agnes, who had no idea I was married. I realize the dress will not fit her right now, but it should someday. I'd had enough. You'd better go inside because it's freezing outside. I believe you still adore Ruby. This is also bad. Derek, if you wish to contact me, my name is Sylvia Burns. I'm listed in the phone book here in town. I observed my wife's aunt approach the door. Ruby was holding it open for her and waved farewell to me as I drove away. I drove back to the airport and slept on a bench until I could catch a flight back to Ohio. Business was robust over the winter. New recurring customers were referring to our diner as the place to eat. Our seats for all 3 meals were almost completely full. Agnes was the first to discuss growth. Lola and I discussed it, but we realized it would result in a higher debt load. Then, suddenly, a plant began production, and we were requested to cater their lunches. The bank that held our note was more than happy to lend money for the diner's development. Money for setting up equipment in the factory was also offered. Getting skilled help was the largest issue, and we had to advertise outside of the area. Often, we went through 3 applications before finding a cook who could produce our meal to our liking. The factory's lunch program was managed by 1 full-time employee and 1 part-time employee during serving hours. All of the meals were cooked and prepped at the diner before being carried to the venue. When I turned 21 in January, I realized that operating the diner was my life's work. Finally, we were able to employ enough help to ensure that Lola and Agnes only had to wait for 2 of the 3 meals every day. They alternated between breakfast and lunch one week and lunch and dinner the next. Lunch was the busiest time of day, so both women attended. On April 19th, I returned after bringing hot food containers and sandwich trays to the plant. Agnes greeted me at the door as I entered the kitchen. Derek, a woman named Mabel Burns, called. She stated that your wife gave birth to a boy this morning about 6 a.m. She named him Derek Roger Lawson, Jr. That is nice. I pushed by her and entered the kitchen. This wasn't surprising. Naturally, I knew the baby was on its way. And knowing Ruby, the name wasn't that surprising. I'd have to think about it before deciding whether Ruby's actions offended me. Agnes stood there, observing as I ignored her and went about my kitchen tasks. I did not know you were married. Congratulations. You must be quite thrilled. She was looking for information. I gave her some. I am married. The baby is not mine. We're estranged because he belongs to someone else. She chose the name for the baby, and I had no involvement. We will not talk about my life before I came here. Is this understood? Agnes nodded her head. I saw Agnes and Lola with their heads together intermittently during the day. Lola confronted me over the information I had provided Agnes. We had an evening dinner to serve together, but Agnes was not present. I very much shut Lola down like I did Agnes. I simply didn't want to discuss it with anyone. On June 10th, I received a letter from Aunt Mabel addressed to me at the diner. Agnes, as chance would have it, happened to be the one who sorted the mail that day. The mail contained only a note and a photo. Derek Ruby is unaware that I am sending you this note, and the photo of her holding your namesake. She is wearing the dress you gave me when you were here last. Motherhood has transformed her, and Ruby is quickly returning to the woman she was when you and she were happy together. She never addresses you, but I know you were on her mind. She communicates with Junior in a loving manner. Most of the time, I don't know who she is speaking to. You or the baby. I know I'm meddling and shouldn't be writing, but it breaks my heart that Derek Jr. doesn't have the love of a father. I love it, Mabel. I was furious at first, but then I remembered that this was Ruby's sole relative. That reminded me of my own aunt. I had seriously ignored her. I would definitely visit her this summer. Women meddle. Lola was a lady. I understand you got a letter from home today. Yes, Ruby's aunt wrote a note. So what did it say? Come on, Derek, share with me. We all left town together, and in some ways, I am implicated, especially if there are any upcoming adjustments. There are no modifications that I am aware of. The note simply stated that Ruby was pretty happy because she now has a kid to cherish. I had Agnes buy a dress for Ruby's birthday in December, but she had no idea it was for my wife. I left it there even after I discovered Ruby was pregnant, and the dress did not suit her. Aunt Mabel shared a picture of Ruby in the dress, cradling the baby. Show it to me. I will if you do not give any suggestions on what I should or should not do. Promise that, and you'll see the note in the picture. I promise. She kept her commitment. Lola had tears in her eyes as she glanced at the photograph. All she said was, "Derek, he's so handsome. I want a baby just like him." She slipped into my arms and kissed me. The kiss included hunger and some passion. Wouldn't you know? I looked up and saw Agnes standing behind us. What you just did was incest. That's not a kiss that a brother and sister should exchange. Are you both kinky or something? We turned to face our buddy. We looked at each other and then laughed. Lola was the one who explained our relationship. Agnes. That was not incest. Derek and I are merely friends, not sister and brother, as you and others have been led to believe. We go back to first grade in school. We grew up in residences just 2 doors apart. We were friends for many years before Derek became attracted to Ruby, the girl he later married. By the time he saw her, I realized what I had between my legs was something other lads would do everything to see or touch, so I gave it to everyone but Derek. After we graduated, I started getting paid for what I used to give away for free. I was also making decent money at it. You know how much I came with. I did it on my back, legs spread wide and in the air. Derek and Ruby married, and I launched my career as a hooker. Derek found she was cheating a few years later, shortly before we arrived here. He was deeply hurt, and he did the worst thing he could to his wife. He hired a hooker and did her directly in the marriage bed as his wife was returning home from work, simply to see him. That was as far ahead as he had intended. She was humiliated just like he was. Ruby was aware that Derek and I had been good friends for several years. She was also aware of my reputation and the business I was in, which made her feel humiliated and as if we had been together for years. She threw him out and never wanted to see him again. Derek left and spent around 5 days with me before we left town. During that period, we had one 10-hour session of nonstop sex. When the marathon was complete, we resolved to move somewhere, find employment, and treat each other like brothers and sisters. We'd leave my notoriety and his cheating wife behind and begin our lives. That's how and why we arrived here. Derek and I have lived in the same room several times, and we currently share a home. We have not had intercourse since that time last year. Actually, we haven't shared any with anyone else. So the kiss you witnessed was more than what would occur between a brother and sister. More should happen between good pals as well. When I saw the picture of his wife and her baby, I was overcome with desire. Derek is and will always be a decent man, so it's not going to happen to me. Lola defended me. I could only do the same for her. Don't ever disrespect Lola. She's a wonderful woman, regardless of what she said or was. Laugh if you want, but I've always respected her. I wish she could say the same for me. What do you mean? I'll answer that. Derek believes he traded on our friendship by hiring me to get revenge at his wife. I don't think about it, but he's always felt awful about asking me. Derek, can you show me a picture of your wife? I cannot picture her at all. I gave Agnes the image. I recognized the dress. I wondered who you intended to present it to. Your lady is stunningly lovely, and the baby is lovely. If you have any hope of reuniting with your wife, you must do so. I looked at Lola. You tell her what I promised. The same goes for her. I am leaving. I was almost out the door when I remembered the photo in the note. Going back. I grabbed it out of Agnes's hand. I didn't get much sleep that night. I got up twice to look at the photo. First, of course, I researched my wife's image. My thoughts ranged from wrath to grief. Finally, love. Love. But if the child wasn't present, I could see love in her eyes for the infant she was holding. I recall when the love in her eyes was for me. I was back to feeling sad again. Could I possibly feel so much love for 2 individuals at the same time? It didn't seem feasible, especially considering everything that had happened between the 2 of us. Was it feasible, considering what had happened? I would have to express that much love for Ruby, then double it and give half to the baby she was holding. I observed his image. He was a baby, for goodness sake. He has a mother. That was basically all he had going for him. What would he have said if I was his father? Will he grow up with my values? Or will he follow in my footsteps? Can I provide him a better life than I did? So many questions and so much confusion in my head. Even if a man and a woman produced a child together, could they be certain that their child would be one of their proudest achievements? I did get some sleep. Then I awoke with the question of Ruby on my thoughts. Could I trust her to be faithful to me, as she promised when we were first married? Her track record was not excellent at all. The second time I looked at the photograph before going to bed, I only gave Ruby a quick glance. I focused on the baby, Derek Roger Lawson Jr. Not bad. It sounded good. Agnes had the morning shift. She was almost as tired as I was. I was no longer needed in the kitchen, so I spent my time completing paperwork, procuring supplies, and processing payroll, sitting in the corner booth. Whoever was at the waiting table kept my coffee cup full. At 10, we stopped serving breakfast. Agnes then said something to me. "I need to talk to you. I'd want to tell you the story of my life. I assume it has something to do with my wife. I requested Lola and you not to talk about this with me. This has nothing to do with you or your wife. I just want to talk, that's all. How long will it take?" "A few hours. After lunch would be the ideal time. That is because I may become emotional. Is this anything I should know? We've been in business together for a year. Why now? I just want to get something off my chest." Agnes felt upset and nervous. This afternoon around 3, I could see it clearly. "Would you like to do it someplace else than here?" She agreed and went away, leaving me feeling as if I wanted a more private space. I knew Lola would be in the house, and Agnes had stated that she did not want to share anything she was going to say with anyone other than me. It needed to be her own residence. I was in the kitchen at 3 o'clock. Agnes came through and went straight to my car. I slid in and said that this had to be at her house. She nodded. "Okay." We arrived at her modest flat and entered. I had never been invited to her home, and we had never socialized at all. The furnishings were basic, yet of decent quality. She guided me inside a little kitchen with a table and one chair. The living room had an older 19-inch TV, but no VCR or DVD player. However, there was a lovely radio resting on the sideboard. She noticed me glancing around. I don't watch much TV. I despise sitcoms and prefer listening to the radio. I listen to a few of country stations when I'm at home. They play the older cheating tunes that I'm obsessed with. "Do you want something to drink?" I don't have much on hand because I don't drink. That is part of what I am going to tell you. I decline the alcohol. I'll get some coffee then. As she did this, I took a closer look around the room. There were several photographs of a 7-year-old girl on the mantel. I could see one through the open door to her bedroom on the nightstand. She brought in the coffee and placed it on the table in front of the couch. It was sweetened but lacked cream. A dish of butter crackers accompanied it, just as she had served it to me at the diner. I sipped my coffee and gazed at her hopefully. "Derek, you were 21 and had to mature early. Life threw you a curveball, but I believe you handled it well. You appear to focus on one problem at a time. I was never able to accomplish that. Look at me and tell me what you see. I suppose I can do it, although I'm not sure why." She didn't say anything and was simply waiting for me to do what she asked. I observe a plain yet pleasant-looking woman, maybe around 40 years old. You have a lovely figure and take good care of yourself. Based on what I see in the diner, you have a large circle of friends. You are not scared to give a bit more of yourself to help others. I know you were generous at initially since you helped Lola and me get started with the diner. Second, you realized it was time for the Whitakers to retire after all their hard work. The only thing that bothers me is that I have never seen you go out on a date. You did fairly good, Derek. Actually, that's me. But that is who I am today, not who I was years ago. That is what I will tell you about who I was years ago. I wasn't married as soon as you were. I was 20. My childhood was quite cheerful, as my mother had me when she was nearing the end of her fertile years. My father was older than Mom. They are both deceased now. In my late teens, I began to act recklessly. Not bad, just some drinking and sex. I wasn't as attractive as my peers, and I wanted the same attention that they received. I met a man and fell deeply in love with him. We married, and life was good for a few years. I became pregnant shortly after we married, and the girl you see in the images around the room is the result. I believe I focused too much on my baby and not enough on my hubby. This happens to many couples and never creates any problems. My baby, Hannah, was 4 years old. My spouse may have sat me down and told me he wanted to switch sex with another couple. This crushed me. But I agreed to keep his love and my family together. Hank should have married someone prettier than I am because he was gorgeous and naturally drawn to women. He is still attractive for that matter. Anyway, we were pleased with the other pair for over a year. Sex was not much different with the other man than with Hank, so it didn't bother me too much. I expected Hank to tire of switching, and we'd go back to being exclusive. This other pair met another couple and encouraged Hank and me to join the group. I opposed and refused to go. This was becoming too distant from a loving family in my mind. Hank went out with him, and I later learned that this was a full-fledged swing group, complete with orgies and narcotics. I was really bitter and always battled with Hank. These were his words. Once, try it only once. You'll adore it. You enjoy sex, and for once, you can get everything you want in one evening. I'm really upset. I promised to attend. Derek, do you know what a pig party is? Actually, you do not want to know. Anyway, I was the pig, and my spouse set me up. I'll admit that the drugs and drink they were feeding me had me completely out of control. I had no idea how awful I was until I viewed some tapes of me as the pig. Agnes spoke as if she were narrating a trip to the mall, with little intonation. For 3 years, I was the star. No, it's 2 years. I counted the years. We just traded with one couple. It had to come to an end eventually, of course. Hank and I went to a party one night when we arrived out front. He stated that he was not feeling well and was going home. He would send the babysitter home and watch Hannah. I did not want to go inside, but he persuaded me. He told me he had heard that they had 2 new couples and a large quantity of medicines. You see where I was by this point, Derek? I had the wrong priorities, mostly because I became addicted to something other than family. 3 hours later, the party was raided and I was dragged away to jail. Hank refused to bail me out, claiming he didn't want me around. Hannah. I spent 2 months in a cell, waiting for my trial to begin. When I arrived at the gathering, there were 33 other people. There were only 9 of us there during the attack. It was long assumed that many of the partygoers had been warned about the impending raid, and what time. I was so out of it that I wouldn't have believed anyone, even if they said the narrative was catching up with Agnes and she was silently sobbing. I wasn't sure if she'd tell me about the aftermath, but she did. Hannah was taken into care by social workers. Hank was never charged. Hell, he avoided everything by claiming he was at home with his kid on the nights I went out. The prosecution presented the videotape of me at the pig party. And because drugs were discovered on the night of the raid, I was sentenced to 2 years in prison and declared an unfit mother. Hank ended up having sole custody of Hannah. He also holds a restraining order against me. I can't get near or see Hannah till she's 18. Did Hank get off free? Yes. Over the years, I've concluded that he was the one who tipped off the cops about the party. You see, he married one of the women who were regulars before the attack. Her husband and I both served jail time. She was quite well off and received everything. She even got Hannah to become a mommy. Tears flowed freely now. I stood up and grabbed Agnes into my arms, cuddling and hugging her. I waited till the tears subsided before asking, "How did you end up working at the Whitaker's diner?" "When I was released from prison, I did something similar to what you did. I didn't have a house, family, or money. I was on probation and was unable to leave the state. Fortunately, I had a lovely probation officer who gave me Whitaker's name. They needed a waitress severely. One Sunday afternoon, the probation officer brought me here for an interview. She has really put herself out because I live 230 miles away. That happened 7 years ago. Why are you telling me all this?" Agnes was silent then. "I promised not to talk about you and your wife. Derek, I was as twisted up as a lady can get. I changed. I have a feeling your wife has or will change. Please give her a chance. I don't want the little kid she's holding in the picture to wind up like my Hannah. Maybe not the same, but the little child needs a father, and you appear to be his best shot at having one. This implies I'll have to forgive my wife. Will that be so difficult? I will warn you, however. If you can't completely forgive her, you'll both be miserable. I did not respond, but instead posed a question. Will you see your daughter soon? The restraining order must be nearly up. Agnes's face lit up with a smile. The first one I'd seen today. She's coming to see me next week. I hope I told you how fortunate I was to have a probation officer. For the past 3 years, I've communicated with Hannah through her. Come see how she appears now. Agnes walked me into her bedroom and opened the nightstand drawer. There was an image of a lovely young lady. It appeared to be her graduation picture. Hannah knows everything about me and what happened with my spouse. According to my knowledge, Hannah barely tolerates her stepmother, despises her stepsisters, and is quite reticent around her father. They know she knows what they did to me, but they're not sure how she found out. Why did you tell me about your life? I do not know much about your relationship with your wife. I understand you should settle it before the infant in the image is heard in any manner. You and she may have a lot of guilt, but don't let it affect him as well. I looked at Agnes. I should be annoyed at her interfering with my affairs. She was also looking to see how I would react. I know you mean well, Agnes, but how can I settle this when I don't understand my own thoughts? More significantly, I don't know Ruby's thoughts. Her Aunt Mabel is the one who continues informing me of what is happening, but I don't know if Ruby is aware that I know about the baby's birth. We will find out. I guess I should go check how my aunt cared for me when my parents passed away. I mentioned in the morning that I was returning home to check in on my aunt. I might be gone for 4 or 5 days, Lola asked. Have you made a decision on Ruby and the baby? No, and I can't because I don't understand her feelings. I don't want to try to fix this without confronting her directly. I need to be able to predict her reaction if I say something. I get it. I wish you remembered one thing. This is now your home. If you stayed with her in New York, you would be making a lot of sacrifices. Lola kept her head down, not looking at me. Her hands were twitching slightly as she twisted a napkin between her fingers. It came to me. Lola fell in love with me. I mean, she was more than just a childhood companion. I had always thought her to be. I will be back, Lola. I couldn't say any more. How could I? We had backed ourselves into a corner by appearing and making others believe we were sister and brother. I had a wife who had a child with someone else, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I felt confident that Agnes, on my end, and Aunt Mabel, on Ruby's end, wanted me to take Ruby back into my arms. They believed it was the macho thing to do, and the best for the baby. Maybe it was, but I wasn't sure I'd be happy. I finished all my paperwork and booked a round-trip ticket to New York. I arrived in town shortly before lunchtime. I used my key to re-enter my former residence. There was no one there, but a stew was cooking in the crock pot. Ruby and Junior arrived about 15 minutes later. Hello, Derek. It's good to see you. Lunch is almost ready. Will you eat with me? Yes. Allow me to hold the baby while you get it ready. He needs his diaper changed. Tell me how and I'll try it. Ruby glanced at me with astonishment in her eyes. She shrugged and showed me what needed to be done after he was dry. I sat with him and watched my wife place the stew on the table. Where is your aunt? She's up north, visiting friends for a few days. I'm delighted she's not here. We need to speak, and she butts in. I understand she means well, but it isn't always what I want. I get what you mean. One of my partners feels the same way. Lola. No, Agnes. The one who chose the dress I got you for your birthday. It's a gorgeous dress. I love it. I couldn't believe you left after discovering I was pregnant with Junior. I had some photos made of me while wearing it. I know it. Mabel sent me one. She has your address. I didn't realize that. She has called and left notes about you. How would I have known you had named the baby after me? Is that bothering you? The newborn had to have a name, and I am not ashamed of mine, so I am fine with it. Ruby filled the dishes with stew and sat down. She was clearly nervous as she confronted me across the table. Junior was growing agitated. He needs to be fed. I'll go into the other room. No, I prefer to watch. I am still your husband, and I have some rights. Okay, I guess, but I don't believe it is correct. I mean, given the circumstances. I did not say anything. Ruby's cheeks heated at first, but then a look of contentment spread across her features as Junior hurriedly went about his dinner. I guess that turns you on. Why am I doing this in front of you? Not really. I was interested. That is all. I've never seen a newborn nursing before. I believe it is time for us to decide where we stand together in this marriage. First, I believe you should tell me what you desire. We are both 21. I am not going to talk about how much you have harmed me. There is no point in that. You've arranged for Barry to pay for the baby's upkeep in a way that will remain between us, while also reminding me that the baby isn't mine. I am amazed you have not filed for divorce. I understand if you don't have the money, Mabel will pay for it. She has not offered because she wishes the best for you, and the baby is with me, correct? Right. Seriously, Derek? I have not asked for a divorce because I am worried you will accuse me of adultery. I don't want my child to grow up having to deal with a mother with that label. I can make it as a single mother. Believe it or not, there is a man who is aware of my predicament and is still interested in me. I'm interested in him too, but I haven't pushed him because I'm still married to you. Do you have a lawyer? Yes, and he's also extremely sharp. He struck an agreement with Barry to back me. He is a semi-retired judge who holds office hours in the morning. Would he come to your house today afternoon if you phoned him? I need to speak to someone, and I do not want our company to go public at all. I'll call you, grab the baby, and burp him as soon as he does that. He'll fall right to sleep. The conference with the attorney lasted about 2 hours. I had planned to visit my aunt at the nursing home today, but that would have to wait until tomorrow. If everything goes as planned, the paperwork the attorney is drafting for my signing will be available in 2 days. My life was getting back on track. It would take some time, but I was expecting it. I did not sleep with Ruby, and our relationship was not intimate. We talked all night till the baby's 2 hours on feeding, and then I fell asleep in Aunt Mabel's bed. I discovered of my wife's spiral into adultery, which prevented me from wanting to have sex with her. I had been completely oblivious of the lie at the time. I couldn't believe I had been so naive. I remembered how much I loved Ruby, which was understandable. While eating breakfast, Ruby asked that I forgive her. I hesitated before responding. I do not think I can. Not completely. Anyway, you told me the last time I was here that you tried to become pregnant and claimed the baby was mine. I understand since you were attempting to get back at me for cheating Lola in front of you. This is far too much for me to forgive, but you appear to like JR. I do. The baby isn't the main concern here. You're cheating, and I'm getting even. And then you try to force me to have someone else's baby, which makes things even worse. Tell me, were you thinking of a little one like Junior when you were screwing Barry's buttocks off in order to become pregnant and blame me? She took 2 minutes to respond, thinking about what I had said. Derek, you were very right. I should not have sought for pardon. But you've been so courteous to me about everything. I'm trying, but it's difficult. Meanwhile, the evens must come to an end at some point. If we continued to be together, we would harm each other again. If the attorney can persuade the court to grant his request, we can be friends, but not more. I hope we can keep in touch. I'd like to follow Junior as he grows up. After all, he shares my name. That is a promise. Aunt Mabel entered through the front door. Ruby was seated across from me, and she had just opened her blouse to feed Junior. Mabel instantly came to the erroneous conclusion. She assumed that everything was okay between us and that we were living as husband and wife again. I stood up and took her sweater, which she had removed before I could hang it up. She came into my arms and held me. I just knew if I gave you a picture of Ruby in the dress that matched her eyes, you'd rush here from Ohio. Or perhaps it was your son. Sit down. Auntie Derek arrived yesterday morning before lunch. He arrived to see his aunt at the nursing home. We are not getting back together. In fact, we are working to get our marriage annulled. I believe this is the best decision for both of us. I mistreated my spouse too much and too frequently to believe otherwise. What about him sitting there when you feed the baby? So what? You've seen me take care of the infant many times before. I'm not ready to get back into any type of relationship. We are still technically married for a few more days, which may make things feel odd. However, keep in mind that times have changed since your childhood. Where is he? Sleeping. He slept on your bed last night. Tonight, he can sleep on the sofa. Or you could sleep with me, and he can use your bed again. I taught him how to change the baby, and one day when he has his own children, he will know how. Not with you, I take it. No, not with me. I broke in with. I'm heading over to the nursing home. I'll come returning to take you all to dinner. I'll tell you all about the dinner that I'm co-owner of this evening. I'm pretty proud of all of my accomplishments throughout the last year. Ruby was wearing the sky blue dress I had purchased her. She was beautiful. The car seat included a portion that could be removed to carry the baby in. I carried it into the restaurant. It was located close to Ruby. I sat across the table from the infant, staring at him. Ruby and Aunt Mabel talked as if I wasn't present. I knew I was not being ignored. I wasn't very active in their lives right now. If I wanted to make things worse, I could sit here with my family. However, I had to forgive Ruby and understand that she had cheated on me and I had to forget about it. It was too much. I focused my attention on Junior for the rest of the meal. I called the diner when we got back from the eatery. Agnes answered the telephone. How's it going, Derek? Fine. I'm staying in my old house with Ruby and the baby. Aunt Mabel is also here. It's kind of crowded and I don't get much sleep. Every morning, the infant wakes up around 2. I get up and assist him change. Ruby feeds him, and then we return to bed. Agnes was curious. Are you guys getting back together? I mean, are you coming back here with Ruby? We have an attorney who is resolving things for us. Do you all miss me? I do. Lola hasn't said anything and is relatively silent. How soon were you planning to tell us about your plans? Derek, we cannot lose you. Lola is not delighted if you bring your wife with you. I would understand if you did. I will tell her you called. Oh, my daughter will arrive a week from Friday. I'm arranging a large celebration. I wish you could be here. I will attempt to make it. Say hello to everyone for me. I'll hang up now. Love you. Our attorney scheduled a court appointment with the family judge next Monday. He expected the annulment to go through. The attorney had worked hard on his presentation. There was no property to divide. In addition, the biological father provided considerable financial assistance for the child. The wife also had some income, so she could adequately care for her child. This was important. There was no enmity between the parties. There just was no affection, and in the best interests of all parties, the marriage should be dissolved. Monday night, after the court had taken the annulment into consideration, I called Lola. It was late, and she had been asleep. Lola. Today, I went to court to obtain an annulment. I'm not sure how the judge will rule, but the attorney believes he'll rule to dissolve. If he doesn't, I'll have to divorce Ruby in the traditional manner. It takes 6 months. That's a long time to put your life on wait. It is a road that prevents me from doing what I want. I simply called to let you know where I am. Thank you for calling, Derek. Is the infant as cute as he appears in the photo you showed me? Furthermore, I have contributed to his transformation. Got a baby? Can create a foul-smelling mess. How is Ruby dealing with all of this? She's good. Beautiful as always. Of course, she wants this to move forward as soon as possible. And I am staying here with her and her aunt. I kicked the aunt out of her bed, and now she has to sleep with Ruby. The old lady is sad that we aren't staying together. She likes me. I like her a lot. I still like Ruby. I have to say, I adore the infant. Someday I'll have a boy of my own. Ruby and I have chatted a lot. She recognizes that she has lost my trust and cannot regain it. She implored me to forgive her, but I couldn't. I told her maybe someday, but not yet. I called to check how you were doing and to express my desire to return home. I should get home by Friday. Agnes wants me to meet her daughter. Do you know about Hannah? Yeah. She informed me about her life. That was before she started working for Whitaker's. You think you and I had it difficult? Agnes's life was 10 times worse than ours, in certain ways. Hearing her tale inspired me to make a decision about what I want to do with my life. It surely is not with Ruby. I wish I was more definite about my future. Perhaps we could get down when I get home and discuss what we can do about your life. I want you to be happy. We've always been pretty honest with each other. I believe we can come up with something. Do you know anything else? I almost told Ruby our little joke about how you and I came to own and finance the cafe. Why haven't you? I did not respond for several heartbeats. I didn't because I believed it would be insulting to you. I could not do that to you. Hey, I've had enough of talking. Love you. Lola. Good night. I believe I was too timid to declare myself, but what if Lola felt differently than I did? The judge decided to dissolve our union by annulment. Ruby's desire to revert to her maiden name, Roberts, raised some concerns. This would leave the newborn with the name Lawson. Ruby said that before the baby was old enough to grasp what a surname was. She planned to appeal for a name change. It could be Roger J.R. Roberts. She would refer to him as RJ till that happened. I was in agreement and would not oppose the adjustment. I flew home as a single man late Thursday night. In the diner, I had no duties other than myself. Yes, to anyone in my future. I choose to be a life partner. I was seated in the corner booth when Lola opened the diner in the morning. She didn't notice me at first because she was busy. When she did, I rose up and moved into her arms as she approached. We kissed on the cheeks like we had for almost a year. I'm pleased to be home. I am delighted you were too. We missed you. How come you arrived so early? You must have been awake much of the night. You should be in bed. I'll get to that later. Could you bring me the first cup of coffee once it's ready? Sure. 10 minutes. You want a sweet roll? No, not yet. I'll ask when I want one. As Lola walked away, I sat back down and asked questions. Is Hannah here yet? Came in yesterday. She starts working with us next week. She is really kind and cares deeply for her mother. The lady who brought her stayed behind to see you. Good. My coffee has arrived. Sweet with no cream. As Lola started to walk away, I replied, You deserve a tip. Will this be enough? I held out an open ring box. Lola held it reverently in her hands, barely looking at it, since her gaze was drawn to mine. Then she added, I really want to do this, but we can't. People here think we're sisters and brothers. What might they say? I have figured out how to describe it. All you need to say right now is whether you want to be my wife or not. Will you accept my proposal for marriage? Yes, I will. I've been waiting patiently for so long. I don't care if people think we're brothers and sisters. No, I care. I hope for a good, clean life ahead of us. Lola, I told you I'd ask when I desired a lovely part. Would you be so kind as to tumble into my bed tonight? I will be waiting there for you. Our words were practically nonsensical as we clung and whispered love to each other. She waited for these words. Lola, I love you, was spoken. I wondered how I could have almost squandered my opportunity for pleasure. It could have been mine, as far back as before I met Ruby. I held her now, and I would never let her go. It would take some time for Agnes and Hannah to become acclimated to each other again. But Lola and I were there to help make things happen. When Hannah saw how much her mother was loved not only by Lola and me, but by all of the Whitaker's customers, she began to see her mother through our eyes rather than her twisted dad's. Whitaker's Diner is still in business. I hung a large sign right inside the entrance that read, Derek Lawson and Lola Monroe ran away from their past and found love. The nuptials will take place on Labor Day. Free barbecue for our customers. After my name, there was a copy of my birth certificate, followed by Lola's. No one has the audacity to challenge our right to happiness. Ruby and Aunt Mabel were invited to the wedding. Ruby wrote her regrets, stating that she was vacationing in Vermont with a friend that week and would be unable to attend. Aunt Mabel did attend and told me all about Ruby's new man. She admitted that she liked him almost as much as she liked me. Before the year was over, I was told Junior had been adopted and that I no longer had a namesake. His new name was Graham. Lola and I set off on the road more than a year ago, not knowing where we would end up. It led us to various locations. Whitaker's dinner for one, but really for each other and for happiness. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.